let's get right to this. Will the Iranians return to the negotiating table with the Americans?
On only one condition. And this is something that Larry and I have been on top of it since Sunday night, in fact, especially Monday and Tuesday. The only condition is for the Americans to come back to the table and fulfill the commitments, the 14-point commitments of the MOU. There will be no renegotiation, no addendums, no footnotes, no nothing. That's it. This was signed by both presidents, Pezeshkian and Trump. It was broken by the Americans. Most points of the 14 points were broken. And this was among, I would say, the key plank of, we finally managed to establish what really happened. There is an Iranian delegation in Islamabad. They arrived on Monday, stayed Tuesday. I think they're leaving today or left this morning. And there was a message which we managed to establish. It was a message not directly from leader Mojtaba Khamenei, but let's say from the Supreme National Security Council. Basically, they would accept a proposal that came from the Pakistanis and the Qataris for a 10-day pause, which will be extended later on. But this is what the Iranians wanted in return, which basically is nothing. They just said, look, if you go back to the table, you start implementing the Memorandum of Understanding from day one. That's it, or there's nothing else. And guess what happened? Trump rejected it immediately.
So why should the Iranians trust Trump? He and his real estate agent advisors have deceived them 3 times: in June, exactly, in February, and now with this MOU. And the vice president is wrapped up in this as well. Are any of them to be believed?
No, they don't, but they don't exclude diplomacy, Judge, which is something that was reiterated by Arakshi in public 2 or 3 days ago. He said, look, even there is a very, very tiny possibility of diplomacy, we won't abandon it. But of course, they don't trust anything. And they know how the empire of plunder and piracy is non-agreement capable, to quote our dear friend Sergei Lavrov. But they don't say no. And they knew when they told the Pakistanis, this is what you should tell the Americans. Okay, go back to the table, respect the MOU from the start. They knew that it would be rejected, and it was rejected like clockwork.
Are your friends, the Pakistanis, speaking to the Americans? We know they're speaking to the Iranians. You just told us in your column coming out later today, you describe rather dramatically, I must say, the arrival of the Iranians to bring messages to the Pakistanis. Are the Pakistanis being truthful, faithful mediators? Are they speaking to the Americans? And if so, who do they speak to? Do we know?
We don't know. We cannot name names because they won't name names. But they are speaking directly to the White House. This is why. Because Asim Munir is involved. And Asim Munir picks up the phone and he can talk to anybody he wants in the White House, including President Trump.
Who is this?
The Field Marshal Asim Munir, the chief of the army in Pakistan.
Okay. This is the guy who is
the guy, Judge. Yes.
The apple of Trump's eye.
Exactly. And he's essential. But the point is, and it's becoming clearer and clearer, that Trump is instrumentalizing Asim Munir to get some sort of ersatz deal, which is not exactly the MOU he signed, in the words of one of the Pakistani mediators, that would avoid humiliation. essential. So this goes to the heart of the matter. Trump needs something to sell where his ego is not bruised. He cannot sell the MOU to domestic public opinion in the US because most people are going to say, okay, so the Iranians are dictating the terms and the clockwork, as they are. The thing is, he was, according to the Pakistani mediators, we trust the information that they give us, but we need to check, of course. Larry and I do our checking via the Iranians, always, when they tells us something really, really explosive. But one thing that they told us, and we cannot check with anybody else, is that Trump was calling us Simonir every day, literally, begging him for an off-ramp, a way out, but that would spare him some humiliation. So we assume that he was defining the MOU as a humiliation. And Simonir did not do anything for a few days. He said, look, I'm still talking to the Iranians. There will be a delegation that will be coming here. So the delegation arrived on Monday. They had substantial discussions yesterday on Tuesday. And then when the Pakistanis told Trump, look, this is what they are proposing, they would accept a pause, but you have to fulfill the MOU right away. He said no. Yeah.
Pepe, I think you're breaking news of international significance here, that the Iranians would accept a pause, because they're doing, we'll get to this in a few minutes, they're doing devastating work on American military bases in the area. That you're telling me that the Iranians would accept a pause if the United States goes back to the Memorandum of Understanding, and you're telling me that the chief of the army is speaking directly to President Trump. Are Witkoff, Vance, and Kushner out of the picture?
Yes, because they don't count. And the only person that counts in terms of the mediation for the Iranians and also for the Pakistanis, because they are putting themselves on the line, is to talk directly to Trump. But then there's an extra complicating factor, Judge. We ran this, Larry on his side, with people in the US, and myself with the Iranians. I ran through the Iranians what might have happened in Islamabad. And I got 3 no's. And these sources are really good in Tehran. But it's very important for us to keep in mind that there are different power centers in Tehran. And some of the most sensitive information is not supposed to leak. So among the things that they told me, no, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei is not in touch with anybody in Pakistan. This is technically true. First of all, because he's extremely well protected in a bunker in Tehran. And the people who talk to him are only in person, the communications are only analog. And when he sends something written, it has to be delivered in person. It could have been this message. And in the beginning, and it gets even more complicated, because in the beginning, the Pakistanis were expecting a letter from Mojtaba, so everybody was very excited. Then the interior minister of Pakistan, Momani, he told the Pakistanis, look, there's no letter, but I have a message for you. So this message comes with the imprimatur of Mojtaba, but it could have been written by his very tight inner circle, no problem. But the thing is, it's a consensual view. But there are other members of the Supreme Political Council and IRGC hardliners, let's put it this way, to simplify, that don't agree with that. First of all, they don't agree that this information is leaked, and they don't agree with any sort of communication with the Americans anymore. So that's why I got a response that no, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei is not talking to the Pakistanis. And number 2, they told me, look, there has been no message whatsoever, and we refuse to discuss the possibility of a 10-day period, 60-day period, 90-day period. So this, I'm not sure this reflects the overall consensus in Tehran. It may reflect the consensus among the hardliners. But the source that I was talking to via some of my friends, these sources are among the hardliners. So there is some leeway to interpret. They don't, for instance, say that we're not talking to the Pakistanis at all. No, they're very specific. Because the Pakistanis would never, it's against their own interest to pass this information around and tell Larry and myself, knowing that the Iranians will immediately say, you're lying. It's pointless because they're doing everything they can to be credible mediators. And we learned another thing today, Judge, which also is, there is a price for this mediation. And we finally learned what it is. It's the emergency $10 billion mechanism to save the Pakistani economy. And the Pakistanis asked Scott Bessent directly for it. And so far,
what is it? Is it Pakistani money in an American bank, or they just want to gift it?
American money to stabilize the Pakistani rupee. And very important. So far, only 2 countries received this stabilization mechanism. Uruguay and Argentina. Argentina was last year. Uruguay, I think, was 2 years ago, and Argentina last year. So Pakistan will be the 3rd. So there is a price for all that. Of course, they need it.
Let me go back.